Good evening, everyone, and those of you who are joining us here at the Spiritist Society of Baltimore virtual meeting. Welcome to our Saturday meetings, and we are so glad that you're joining us. So before we begin today, we always begin by doing a small reading of the book, Happy Life, and then going to our prayer and introducing our speaker for this evening. So we're going to go ahead and read a small passage from the book, Happy Life, that's psychographed by Givaldo Pereira Franco by the spirit mentor Joanna DeAngelis. Be a real friend. Know how to conduct yourself with discretion and nobility with those who choose your friendship. Discretion is a rare treasure in earthly friendships. It is normally replaced by insensitivity and unseriousness. Everyone likes noble and discreet company, which inspires confidence and leads to tranquility. Listen, see, follow the conversations with nobility, and be faithful to the confidence deposited in you. Dear friends, what a great reminder for this evening and for our lives, really. So join me as I do this opening prayer, setting the tone for this evening before our talk. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the blessings of this day. We thank you for this moment that we can be together, albeit virtually. And we ask for the prayer and guidance over our speaker, Daniel, this evening. May he be inspired by the mentors, the good and loving mentors, for this message this evening about Jesus. May it touch each one of our hearts and guide and assist all those who need it. In Jesus' name, and so be it. All right, dear friends, without further ado, we're here to welcome Daniel Santos for his talk this evening. Daniel, please.
Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be here, and especially this month of December that we approach, the holidays. In fact, we already celebrate Thanksgiving here in the US, and now we're approaching Christmas, and it's always like dear for us in the Spiritist movement, I would say, but also in the whole Christianity community this month of December, because we celebrate Christmas, right? And Christmas means the birth of Jesus, although we don't know exactly when Jesus was born in the calendar. I think there is no certainty on that. But that's not the main reason. The main reason is the time that we revisit this figure that has impacted humanity. And for us, the Spiritist is a is a figure that is the central point of this teaching, because the teaching that Jesus brought to us help us in this evolutionary process. It's not discarding the other teachings for other prophets and philosophers, but his teachings really is a divide history, basically, right? And in December, we always would like to remind ourselves about who was this spirit that incarnate in this planet and brought so many teachings that still today we are trying to follow those teachings. He put the bar very high, but he also was very kind to remind us that we can build the kingdom of heaven inside of us. So the idea of today's talk is just, as I mentioned, just to revisit this his teachings. Of course, we entitled the teachings of Jesus. Basically, we will touch in who was Jesus in Spiritism, what is his importance for us Christian and Spiritist, those that follow his teachings, the methodology that he used to deliver his message. So this is an important point that we will address in this short conversation that we're going to have today here. So we tied to this presentation, The Teachings of Jesus Christ. Of course, Christ is a title that is given to a very high spirit for someone that has achieved a very high level of understanding all area, right? So, but the first question that comes to our mind is about um, who was Jesus for us, right? So, and we learned that Jesus in Spiritism is considered the governor of our planet. He was the architect, which means he was the one that 4.5 billions of years ago helped to build, you know, the solar system, the especially like our planet. Um, Also, we would say that he could be the commander. Commander is someone that will help us to, to guide ourselves toward a goal. And in Spiritism, our ultimate goal is perfection. So in the Spirit's book, question 625, we learn that when Kardec asked the question, what is the most perfect standard that God has offered to humankind as a guide and model. In Spiritism, we refer to Jesus as the guide and model for humanity. And the Spirit answer one word, please see Jesus, right? The answer is just Jesus. In this question, Kardec beautifully make a comment about this answer. The Enlightened Spirit decided not to go much to say Jesus because by the time that the Spirit's codification was brought to light, the knowledge about Jesus was very broad already. It was in the 1900, right? The 1800. So Kardec mentioned Jesus is the highest standard of moral perfection to which humankind may aspire on earth. Then he continued, God offered him as the most perfect model, and the doctrine he taught is the purest expression of God's law because he was animated by the divine spirit and was the purest being that that have ever walked the earth. So this telling us that when we talking about Jesus, when you bring this topic about his teaching, we are talking about someone that is way ahead of us. But the beauty here is that he was considered the guide and model for humanity. So that's the ultimate goal that we human being would achieve one day. How long is this is gonna take to be like Jesus? Well, but one of the things that we know is that when Jesus incarnate, because he never reincarnate in this planet, he just incarnate once, he was already a perfect spirit. So in 4.5 billions of years ago, if he was already a perfect spirit, so it means that um, uh, for us to achieve that level of perfect spirit is going to be much more than that, right? Because he probably took many millions of years to go to the process of become purified, to become this perfect spirit that or pure spirit as we define in spiritual. So it's going to take some time. So we know through scientific study that a solar system, the lifetime of a solar system is about 15 billion years. So 15 billion years, and Jesus was already perfect in 4.5 billion years. So it means that at least like took 10 billions, year for a spirit to become in that level of perfection, pure spirit. So, but let us see what we learn more about Jesus. For example, when we look at when we ask this question, why did Jesus come 2,000 years ago? Why not 3,000? Why not 4,000? Well, we need to look history and put in perspective in a timeline as we put it here. As we learned through history that about 2,000 years ago we have the appearance of the human kingdom in this planet. The Homo sapiens was the record that we find through history that the first, Homo sapiens was detected 200,000 years ago, but only 3.3 thousand years ago that we, after this civilization, Egyptian civilization, Greek civilization, we have the figure of Moses that comes and change a little bit how humankind, how was the society for a different level. So what I mean by that is that 3.3 thousand years ago, Moses come and create a set of laws in the Hebrew community after after free the Jewish from the be enslaved in the Egyptians, right? The Exodus explained this, and also brought the Ten Commandments and the institution of the monotheist idea, which means that was with Moses and that culture that brought the idea of one God. So in order for Jesus to come, certain of um, culture and understand needs to be already in place so he can be more effective in deliver his message. And then about 1.3 after Moses, 1.3 uh, thousand year after Moses, 2000 year count from now, Jesus came. And he already find a society, a group of people, in this case, the Jewish people, that's already incorporating the idea of one God. Um, and he was born in that culture, and he kind of brought further information about how to, build this kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven inside of us. So pretty much he came to deliver a message. Which message? We learned in the Spirit's book, well, the law of God or the divine laws. So it is bring more information beside the information that we already had that was brought by Moses, how to achieve happiness, right? Also to bear witness of, of, of his truth, what he was teaching. And this is we can find this in the Gospel of John, chapter 18, verses 37. And most of all, the most important of Jesus uh, incarnate in our planet was to exemplify, was to not only say or teach us, but to show through his action, through his deeds, um, what would be to be what would be to be a perfect humanity, right? So we can see all this when we read the gospel, when we read the New Testament, the life of Jesus. So his ministry was pretty much based not only in teaching, in telling people what to do it, but also to serve. Also we learn about his friendship, especially his with the disciples, how kind, how friendly he was. Of course, regards to the teachings, we learn about the parables. He took a different approach that in that time they have, that pretty much the Greek philosophy and the other kind of approach of teaching was not Jesus' approach. His approach was to tell a story, to tell parables, right? And also he performs miracles, and he bear testimonial, like he forgives, especially when he was betrayed by his fellow friend, the disciples. And also more than ever show to us this what we call unconditional love, that is go to the sacrifice without you know have to defend himself. So in this organization that we call SER, it's called Social Organization de Espiritualidade and Religion, would be an organization of spirituality and religiosity. Is an organization in Brazil. They did a study on the Gospels to find out about, um, uh, Jesus' ministry, basically. So, in regards to the parables, they search, in regards to the teaching, they search in 300, no, 3,778 vesicles, and in 1097 of this vesicle, they find out that the what Jesus brings to us, the teachings, is allegories. So we pretty much is stories that will encompass the culture of the time, and the in a very plain language that would be very easy for people in that time to understand what he's trying to say. One of the things that we need to take in consideration here is that that time, the level of understanding, the scientific level, science was not something that everybody has access. It was a few group of people that has access to books or to education. So the population at that time was pretty much agriculture, was pretty much farmers, in they are not, they pretty much work to survive, right? Not in regards to understand about life. That was not the main question of the majority. And Jesus come and implement and bring this approach of parable in order to teach um, people, how to live well and how to achieve happiness. Despite of all, the hard condition that that type presented. So pretty much 52.15% of these teachings was based in allegories, right? Was based in stories that Jesus brought to exemplify or to teach about this kingdom of God, this place that he was promised, um, that we all go one day. So when we talk about parables, the first question that comes about what parable is. So parables comes from the Greek parabole, which means to compare, is a comparison, is an illustration or allegory. A parable basically is an unearthly story with a heavenly, heavenly meaning. So as we can see here, so we just list a couple of those parables. So there is about 10 parables that shows in only Matthew, Gospel of Matthew, two parables that is showed in the Gospel of Mark, and there are 14 parables that appear only in Lucas, Gospel of Lucas, and then we have like two parables that we can see in the two Gospel, the Luke's and also Matthew, and four parables that we can find in the three of the Gospel above, from Luke's, Mark, and Matthew. So, and so this parable is pretty much touching what the people in that time was able to understand, right? For example, like when we look at some of those parables, like for example, the weed or the treasure, the lost treasure, right? Or when you see like the Good Samaritan. So it's always based in what people already know. Either was related to um, farm, to agriculture, or to um, different race in that time. For example, the parable of the Good Samaritan, the parable of the lost son, the prodigal son is another example. So when we listen or when we read those parables, they they are timeless, right? This is a story that anyone can pretty much understand, right? It's not something that you really need to, um, um, work harder to understand what Jesus wants to say. Um, and those parable was always triggered by questions that people approach him and ask. And one of the things that was very that draw people to curiosity and to ask Jesus. First is this place that he came from and that he talks about, the kingdom of heaven. We need to understand and put in perspective that in that time, that community was pretty much dominated by the Romans, and they always believed that the Messiah will come and will free them from the heavy taxation, the type of government that was imposed in that area. So the idea is to have someone that was very powerful, was able to defeat the Romans, and also to make sure that that land that was at first considered the promised land become the promised land, right? But for the surprise of people in that time, they saw that Jesus was not those kind of Messiah that will come and engage in a violent combat with the Romans. So the opposite, he came and he had a new approach. He had that, you know, um, for us to give to Caesar what is Caesar and give God what is God. And he extended this idea of the creator of God as a loving father, not someone that will come and fight, right? So in order for him to plant that seed, he really needs to not exemplify, but also tell in a way that um, the population, people would get it. And also, everything he taught that time can be extended throughout history, right? So even nowadays, we are here studying about the parable. Of course, we're not going to discuss each parable because each of these parables is already by itself a seminar, I would say, because there is so many information between the lines, right? For example, when we studied about the prodigal son, about who is the father, who was the father, who was the brother, who was this prodigal son, and the place that he went, and why he came back, and how the father received the son. So all this is to explain, how our creator, how God it is, and what happened when we distantiate ourselves from the creator, the suffering that we go, and how God would receive us if when we find ourselves and decide to come back. So a lot of information we have from each of those parables when we study. So now we have a couple of questions. So the first question that we can ask is about why did Jesus teach in parable? Well, we already explained that that time the level of understanding of the community in that time was not a high level understanding, intellectually speaking. Books, information was not so advanced as we have nowadays. We have the Greek philosophy, we have the Torah, we have the teachings of Moses, all those books, but they are very much restricted to a very small group of people, the doctor of the law, as they call themselves. So, so Jesus could not go out and distribute book or create classroom and teach about different aspect of life, right? So how Jesus is going to talk about God if for the humanity in that time was difficult to concept even the if the our planet was the structure of our planet and what is the sun or the solar system. So this kind of information was not clear, was not there. And Jesus was not worried about this because with time, with advancement of science, of human knowledge, those information will be uncovered, right? But he needs to take some approach in how to tell about, you know, who are we, where we come from, to where we're gonna go, and how is this figure that we call God be, right? So In fact, he's teaching parable basically to reveal the kingdom of heaven by earthly story for easy remembrance. So when you tell a story, it's very easy for us to remember that story, if it is something the way is said. We can see that majority of our learning, when we tell by stories, so become very easy for us uh, to implant that information in our mind. So what are the parable all about? So one of the questions, so if we look at the parable, it's all about the kingdom of heaven. It's about, in another way to say, it's about the future life, right? So pretty much if we look at ourselves today and we identify our pains, you know, so we wanted to see if those sad moment, painful moment, will disappear in the future, right? So, in fact, in the planet that we are living right now, um, it's impossible to have someone that is not has no suffering. We all suffer. Why? I mean, you may say, Daniel, but I'm okay. I have everything. Well, but in the moment that we get old, we get sick, bring some kind of suffering, right? Even if you are okay with the disease, but it's a suffering. If you lose a loved one, even if you're like totally health, has no financial problem, has the best, I don't know, family, the best work. I mean, but for the moment someone die, brings some suffering if you don't understand um, this process of transition, right? So we all gonna go through some moments of suffering in this lifetime. So what Jesus come is to tell us how to suffering by trusting that everything is gonna be okay in the future. So when we look at those parables, there are central points of those parables that we can extract. For example, the first central point that we can extract from one parable is that always has the character of the kingdom, right? For example, when we look at the parable of the mustard seed, you know, so we can identify very clear so that what we have to do to achieve the kingdom of heaven. So when we have about this specific parable that talk about, that a sower went and sow seeds and seed, oh, it's not about sowing seeds, it's about faith. I'm sorry. If you have faith, the size of a grain of mustard seed, so you are able to move mountain. So this shows us that, in order for us to really achieve this kingdom of heaven, is imperative that we have faith, right? The parable of the hidden treasure. So this is the smallest parable that we find in the gospel. If I believe it's like one paragraph with two sentences, something like that. But pretty much this parable is talking about the man went to the field and he found a treasure. So what he did, he went back, he sold everything, his house, his property, and with the money that he sold, he went back and bought it, that land, because he knew that the land has treasures. So this pretty much telling that, sometimes we need to find inside of ourselves, to get to know ourselves in order to achieve this plenitude, achieve this moment of realization. So, and by doing this, we will enter, or we will unveil the kingdom of heaven that is inside of us. But sometimes we are not able to perceive because it's hidden, right? Like a treasure. So the kingdom of heaven is this treasure that we need to looking for, right? We need to searching. The second central point here is the character of the king. It's pretty much like about, the king here would be the creator, would be God, right? And for example, when we learn about the parable of the workers in the vineyard, so, when the master went and hired um, workers, so um, the end of the day, he went to pay those that were hired in the morning, and when uh, the master paid the last one that were hired in the afternoon, they pay with the same amount, right? And it's kind of the one that was hired early in the morning became a little bit upset and complained about the unfairness of the master. And then we learn beautifully from this parable that, those that claim that they are the first one will be the last, and the last will be the first. So this is shows to us that doesn't matter when we realize about this teaching of Jesus, if it is late in our life or if it is early in our life. So the recompense, the reward that we will have is the same, right? Is the same. So the third central point of the parables that we learn is the king's subject, right? The king's subject. So who is the main person in that parable that drive to our attention? And then we can see this, for example, the parable of the Good Samaritan, right? About the man that was beaten, left over there in the road. And then we have the three people that pass by, and just one that has compassion. The other two first didn't want to engage or to help. So the central person over there is what is the one that has compassion with those that was hurt, that was beaten and almost dead, right? So the king's subject. So this is calling our attention. In order for us to achieve this kingdom of God, we need to exercise our compassion, right? So the other one is the other parable that brings to us this idea of that's the central point is the king's subject, is the parable of the persistent widow. Also, it's called the parable of the unjust judge. This is a very interesting parable because this show the case of this woman that wanna every day she used to go uh, to the judge of the city and ask the judge um, to help her against her prosecutors. And the judge always is denied, but every day she used to go and ask the judge to help her every day until one day they just said, okay, in order for me to get rid of this woman, so I have to look at what the case she wanted me to work with. So and Jesus used that parable to tell us, look at the judge. If this judge, you know, somehow has a little bit compassion to really look at the case of this widow, can you imagine our Creator? Can you imagine God? So when we are going to a very difficult time, what we need to do is be persistent, is ask, right? Because at some point, God will help us, will um, um, look at and help us to go through that situation. So those parables bring this idea of that when we put ourselves there and be persistent or be compassionate or have faith, this the size of a mustard seed, or decide to search inside ourselves and find and get to know ourselves, or no matter what time of our life, realize that we need to work in our spirituality. So all this will help us to achieve or to uncover what Jesus is invited us to do. That is the kingdom of heaven, because that's what we are all looking for, right? and and this only is a work in progress that we need to keep in mind. And this also you explain what the future is reserved for us. So very beautiful approach that Jesus brought to us regards to using parables to teach us about, heaven, about the kingdom of heaven, and also uh, how we achieve happiness, right? So another thing that we we learn about Jesus is in the Spirit's book. Kardec asked a question 627, because if Jesus brought all this information, then Kardec was curious about it. He asked, since Jesus has already taught the true laws of God, what value are the teachings given by the spirits? Do they really have anything more to teach us? So that was a very good question, because if Jesus already brought all the information, why do we need to have, you know, more prophets? So people that came after Jesus, to why do we need to have that? Even like the Spiritist doctrine, why we need to have those information if Jesus already have taught us everything about the true laws of God? And the answer is like this: Jesus' teaching were frequently allegorical and in that form of parable, because he spoke according to his time and place. But today, the truth must be made intelligible for all. Thus, it is necessary to explain those laws and elaborate on them, because there are so few who understand them, and still fewer who actually practice them. So, and then the continue and finalize that is the entire love and charity. Uh, um, to you know, it, although Jesus brought those teachings, but we still need to, you know, dive in those teachings, because as we mentioned at the beginning, this is timeless. It was not only for that time, but we can apply this teaching every day for our life in point of our um, the human evolution, right? And one of the things that call our attention here is that that this teaching must be made intelligible. So is that example I brought here about, for example, when we stood one of the parables, like why Jesus, for example, the Good Samaritan. You know, one of the things that we learn is that when Jesus brought the Good Samaritan, Jesus did not identify who is the man that was beaten and left to die, right? So it means that, okay, why, if he did put over there a male or female or a child or old man, then may we are qualified this for that group of people. So what Jesus is telling us here with that parable is that it's not important. It's not important to know anyone that uh, is in a suffering or in a difficult situation. We need to develop what the Good Samaritan did, that was compassion toward that individual, right? So, so we need to really study between the lines and every word that Jesus brought, so we can understand that and we can put in practice. So as we better understand what Jesus taught us, become easier to put in practice, right? So they understand here the intelligible uh, uh, point here, make it easy to practice those uh, um, parables, those teachings, right? He said that the fear who actually practice them. So the enlightened spirit is telling that, okay, you may understand, but to put in practice another story. But we know that as we understand something, it becomes easy for us to solve it, to, you know, to put in practice. But we have the free will to not do it, right? So to finalize, I would like to bring this is a paramount teaching of Jesus, is when he started his ministry with the Beatitude in the Sermon of the Mountain. And I would like to bring it to you here. So this should be animation, but just appear here everything. So we're gonna read the Beatitude, because the Beatitude bring to us very good information for us to put in practice and to build virtues. Sometimes our suffering, our hardship in life is because it's becoming hard for us to understand why we need to go through that, right? And we are here to acquire experiences, right? How can we become perfect one day? How can we master a level that Jesus and the disciple if we don't need, if we cannot, if we are not able to build those virtues, how can we one day we're going to have a conditional love if we are not able to have peace in our heart? So to have humility. So let us read this and identify which kind of virtue Jesus was talking about when we read those Beatitudes. For example, when he said, blessed are the poor in spirits, for there is the kingdom of heaven. So the poor in spirit, Jesus was talking about humility, okay? Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. So we are talking here about the hardships of reincarnation, because every time we come to the physical body, we are subject to the deterioration of the physical body and to the hardship of that incarnation, right? So this is something for us to reflect. For example, when he said, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. He was talking about patience. Be meek means patient, accepted, resignate towards situation that we cannot change. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. So I'm talking about progress and freedom. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be showing mercy. So I'm talking about forgiveness. So in order for us to be able to forgive, so we need to have this compassion, be merciful to one another, right? Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. We are talking about be humble, be simple, talking about simplicity. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Talking about those that promote peace, right? Not peace in any kind, especially like inner peace, right? Or peace among their fellow members. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for there is the kingdom of heaven. And the kingdom of heaven here is the future life, is this place that we all wanted to be one day, the happy world that we wanted to be, happy life, as we learned with Joana de Angelo, right? And in Matthew chapter 5, verse 1 to 12, we learn, and we put over there, rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophet who were before you, So we are not here to have, we are here to build virtues. We are here to go throughout our earthly experience. And when we come to the spiritual world one day, we bring more experience. And then when we incarnated again, those experiences will help us to stay online, to stay in line, or to stay, to make the right decisions. So so this teaching of Jesus sometimes seems very simple because it's simple history, but is very rich in meaning, is very rich in an invitation for us to, um, to put in practice in our life and to help speed up our evolution. I know that when this time in the year comes, December, we all be, especially like many people, um, come a little bit distracted about, the holidays and the material thing, and we even have time to remind ourselves about the true meaning of Christmas, the true meaning of revisit the life of Jesus, and we forget that that is the meaning of this time, is end of a year. So it's a time for us to reflect, a time for us to be grateful, a time for us to rejoice, but it's a time for us also to prepare ourselves for the new year, right? And to revisit these teachings that our guiding model, Jesus Christ, has brought to us about 2,000 years ago, a little bit more. So I guess I think that's it. That's what we wanted to bring this remind as we start this new month of December, um, by remind us about the teaching of Jesus Christ. So I'll bring Kirsten here so we can see if we have question or comment about this topic of Jesus. Hey, Kirsten, you're mute. I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now? I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
So no, great talk about Jesus. So we do have some comments and questions, but it's always good to talk about Jesus any time of the year, but especially at Christmas too. I think it's so important that we revisit that. But let's go ahead and share. We actually have a question that came in from Paula. And she says, is there any Spiritist message on the reconciliation of the Jewish faith with Jesus? It's a really interesting question.
Yes, I think one of the central point is the idea of one God, right? I think let's start from that, and also the ones that start to follow Jesus. Jesus, one of the things that we need to put in perspective to clarify is that Jesus didn't came to destroy any laws. The Jewish laws was very well respected by Jesus, and we as Christians we should respect those as well, even though we don't um, uh, follow the traditions and the rituals, but we should respect um, because that those traditions, those ritual has a meaning, right? And it help them to strengthen their faith and to become a better people. But so, for example, when we look about the Ten Commandments, we that follow Jesus, that call ourselves Christian, we adopted those Ten Commandments. That was initially for the Jewish people. So there we have some um, um, common point, right? And when you read the Old Testament, so for Christian, although all the teachings of Jesus is found in the New Testament, especially in the Gospel, doesn't mean that we don't acknowledge the Old Testament that is more uh, receptive by the Jewish community because that is part of their history, right? So I think there is a lot of message, especially in Spiritism. There is nothing that, especially myself, I never learned anything that um, go in contradiction to the Jewish faith. In fact, what we learn in Spiritism that it is a new way to understand this tradition, to understand the faith of others, to understand even Jesus' teachings, right? With so many Christian denomination after Jesus, the central message of Jesus was lost, and we embrace so many rituals, so many dogmas, so many other things that now spirituals come and try to extract the essence, but not and explain this, to make us free ourselves from those sometime ritual that enslave us instead of make us free, right? But with all the respect of all the line of faith that we have out there.
And that actually is perfect. And no, me and Paula did not talk. So, but I had a question that maybe me and Paula's mind was sort of connected. But I was thinking about, what do we say to people who feel like there are other people who don't want to know about Jesus or about the Jesus as we understand him as Spiritists, people that are just not open to it, or not, maybe they're open to Jesus, but not the Jesus as we understand him. Like they want to keep the religious Jesus that they understand on the cross. What would you say? What are your thoughts on that?
Good question. Can you put the question again? What do we say to people who feel like they are people who don't want to know about Jesus, or the Jesus as we understand? Well, I mean, like each one of us has our time, right? And even Jesus, let's look at Jesus' approach, okay? Jesus came in the Jewish community. We have a huge influence of the Romans out there. We have the Greek as well. And we don't learn with Jesus that Jesus go and say, hey, my message, you guys, Romans, you should take my message because my message is, he didn't do that, okay? So one of the things that we learn is that Jesus was more working exemplified how to treat one another, right? And we don't should be waiting for people to become Christian to understand the way we understand Jesus nowadays, because one day we are maybe not accepting Jesus. Maybe we have many reincarnations, and now we are kind of understand the message, but there is also a long way to understand and to put that in practice. Sometimes we call ourselves Christians, but then when times come to behave like Jesus, we don't. So that is something wrong, right? We call ourselves Christian or Spiritist, but then we do things that Jesus never would do it. So I think we should, you know, look at the life of Jesus as guide and model and see what Jesus would do it. And if people are not doing that yet, and if we are not doing that yet, no worries. We have many time to achieve that. So I think will become a problem when we try to impose our understanding to other. Then we are not living like the message that Jesus brought. I understand that sometimes when we it's like when we find light, some people they want to share their light with us, but we can't, because when we talk about awakening, the awakening is from inside out. We can't shine a light for others. So it's the
Mm-hmm.
person that needs to find their
Right.
own light. And that sometimes can put us in a very stressed situation, because sometimes a family members is a colleague that we are looking, we say, oh my goodness, if you understand that, maybe your suffering will be less. But that's is our perspective, right? If it become a reality is another story. If we would become a reality, it would be another story, right? I
Absolutely.
have addressed that, kissing.
I think so. And what actually came to my mind is something that I think we hear a lot, and we get this question a lot from spiritists and non-spiritists, or people just looking to be more, looking to dive into their spirituality, but they understand the concept of Jesus and they want to be more Christ-like or have more Christ-like consciousness, but at the same time they realize their faults. So they often struggle. And we get this question like, how does one reconcile with not being as good as we believe we can be and accept that we have our failures?
Yeah. We have a good example of this, kissing, especially like in the Jesus life. But can you believe? Um, I mean, like there is two figure in during Jesus' ministry, especially like before the crucifixion. There is the figure of Judah that betrayed Jesus in that way by selling, right? And there is the figure of Peter that was considered like the best friend, right? The person that was close to Jesus, the one that Jesus told him that he would continue his ministry, and when he was very, enthusiastic, master, I'll fight, I'll defend you, I'll do this, I'll do that, and just said, wait, maybe before even like all this finished, you're gonna deny me. So, and he said, no, I will never do that. And he did three times. Can you believe how much guilt went through Peter's life? But what he did, he just like, you know, he just like realized, and he said, okay, one decided to go and kill himself. And so we need to make this decision. What should we do when we find ourselves that we understand the message, but in our day to day, we are still falling. We are still making mistakes. There is two ways we can go. Either we can go and kill ourselves, like Judas did, or we can do like Peter, like reinventing himself, like picking himself up and continue the mission. Okay, I made a mistake. I call myself Christian. I call myself Spiritist, but guess what? I still like do my lies or I do my things that's not according to Jesus. But as soon as we realize that this is not good, so we make efforts to move on. Never stay in the guilt arena or to go and give up completely like Judas did. It's just like we have the option, right? We can go either way. We can stagnate, we can kill ourselves, or we can feel guilt and move on.
We really like that idea that what you said, that reinventing ourselves. I think
Yeah.
that that's really important because there's something to be said about um, sort of having multiple reincarnations in one reincarnation, right? Being able to um, really, what is the word? Really be able to, you know, I can't think of another word other than reinvent yourself. You go through hardships, you go through difficult things, and sometimes the person that you were no longer fits who you want to be. So you have to, become a different version of yourself, a better version. But Daniel, we had a comment that came in from Abby, and I wanted to share it, and maybe you can comment
Mhm.
about what she says. She said the different sects of Judaism usually look at Jesus as the leader of most Christian people. What I've experienced is for most Jews, they look towards Moses.
Yeah, yeah. That's in fact in the level that we are. Let's put ourselves as a humanity. After so many wars, after so many battles, right, between people, between country, between culture. This also we have inside of religion sect, right? So Christian is gonna feel that Jesus is, you know, the the preferred son of God, and others gonna Moses. At the end of the day, if we have, and we learn this in the Spiritist literature, and I'm gonna bring the example, as those spirit they evolved, like you know, this thing of religion label doesn't exist because there is just one religion that is love, right? So, for example, some books of Manuel Filomeno de Miranda and even André Luiz, for example, when we also there is a book by um, I forgot the name. That is the about the suicide. Ivone Pereira,
Memoirs of a Suicide.
Memoir of a Suicide.
Mhm.
So those books, when you read over there, the people that helps, they are even Christians. They were like, from other philosophy, right? So Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, his book as well, we see different sects that they get together to help humanity. So that's the idea. So one of the things that also we learn in spirit is that having Jesus the governor. So when we talk about Moses, about Buddha, about all these religions leader that always came after Jesus, even before Jesus. So in the higher sphere, like those spirit, they work together, right? They are from the same team, the team of God, and we are the one that is like we sometimes we see religions as we see our sport team, right? Like the Ravens is better than the Patriots, so this kind of thing. My quarterback is better so that is the very earthly approach that we have. So from each of those religion leaders, we can extract good stuff, right? So let us go for Jesus. I'm gonna bring an example. So maybe if you are Christian, you are like say, oh, but the Jewish sect or the ritual that they do is so outdated, right? So the circumcision or the other thing that they do. So we may find Christian put this kind of, but the question is, first of all, it's not Christian to do that because Christ didn't condemn those things. What some of the things that the Jewish was done in that time, that Christ came, Jesus came and addressed, was pretty much to help people see in a different way, right? So it's very important for us to realize that here is not a question of my team is better than your team. It's like, what can we do together to help ourselves, right? And unfortunately, we are still seeing people in different level, you know, some Christian that is taking the message as Peter was taking before, like getting the sword and cut the ears of the soldier, like the defender. And when we see Jesus, he didn't even defend himself, right? So it's a long journey that we as a humanist need to go. To conclude my comment, Kissing, we need to do the best that we can do to help ourselves and to help others, and try to understand. Well, the thing that we need when we say understand doesn't mean that we agree. Maybe there is some ritual that doesn't make sense, but we need to respect. We need to understand. We need to see that for that group of people, it is important, you know, because we never would like someone to come to our house and tell us how we should do stuff, right? Why are we gonna do this to other religion sect? That would not be good at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Abby posted another, just a response to it. She said, "Great talk. Yes, we are all brothers and sisters. Sadly, sometimes organized religions separate us." Thanks
Yeah.
for the discussion. Yeah, I think it's a much needed discussion, right? I mean, maybe it's taboo for some, but I think it's okay for us to discuss these things, that there are differences. But I think you brought up a really good point, Daniel, that sometimes we do, it is our uh, very human side of us where we treat religion as we do sports teams, in the sense that, well, the Eagles are better than the Ravens, which they're not. Yeah.
Wow, you're not gonna be welcome to Philadelphia anymore.
Feeling you are.
You need to stay forever in Maryland.
So, but yeah, I mean, but it's just very much, our earthly perspective. But eventually, hopefully, not hopefully, eventually, because according to law of progress, we're all going to get there. It's
Yeah,
just a matter of
and I
time.
think we can speculate, Kiss, and ask us why this happened, right? Why, the central one of the central point of the religion is about how to love yourself, right? The golden rule is the central point of all religion. We need to respect, you need to do to other what we'd like to do, what other would like to do to ourselves. But here's something that we learn in Spiritism, and this is me, Daniel, my interpretation of why we have all these differences. And if the teaching, although the teaching is not the same, but we have central points of the teaching that is the same. We have one God. We should love one another. We should respect. We should forgive. We have all these central points, pillars of religion. But why don't do this? Simple. Well, the only way to explain this is through reincarnation. Imagine if I have 100 reincarnation as Jewish, okay, and suddenly I have to reincarnate in another sect. So I not 100% that sect because I bring all my background as a Jewish. So if I sleep a little bit, I'll bring the Jewish thing to that sect and vice versa. And we become like, it's the tendency that we come. So if in that religion sect, I was a persecutor of other religion, so then when I become another religion, I tend to use that things against other religion as well. So it is something that the only explanation is that this difference will minimize as we incarnate more in different sects of our society. Then we're gonna understand more what we sometimes put aside down, because now we are living that situation. So I don't see other way to explain this but through reincarnation. you know.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head, as they say. So I think that was really good, Daniel. Um, do you have any final comments or final thoughts that you wanted to share?
Um, One of the things that we learn in Spiritism is, and I would like to share, is that this month of December, especially when we approach Christmas, we learn that group of enlightened spirits from our solar system, they approach the planet Earth. They come close to us. That's why this, even sometimes if we are not religion, we felt that thing to go and buy gifts and do the tradition, the exchange of gift, the secret Santa, and to have those family gathering, the parties, because somehow we observe the presence of this enlightened spirit, and they come from the whole solar system to pay tribute to Jesus, And so I think if we, this month of December, if we can open ourselves to observe those feelings and multiply this toward one another in our family, in our workplaces, we will somehow mitigate or minimize, count, we will somehow like how do you say, balance the energy, the negativity, the the feeling that our humanity is going through, especially because of the pandemic, but also this polarization, uh, this division that we has experienced in our planet in the last couple of years. So I think is a responsibility for each one of us to open our mind, open our hearts, and try to observe, this moment of Christmas and holidays. I know that Hanukkah just passed, but all, independent of any tradition, but this there's a you don't need to belong to religion. It's that those spirit, enlightened spirit, since they approach the planet in the end of every year to bring this to pay this tribute to Jesus, we the humankind, we the humans, we are touched, and sometimes we don't know why, right? And we sometimes we transfer this to material things. That's not totally wrong, but we also need to have some time of your life to reflect upon this time in the year. So I would like just to invite you to reflect on this, and during your prayer, during your during during your prayers, also you can pray for those that are not able to be in touch with this energy field that we receive from the enlightened spirits.
Beautifully said, Daniel. We wanted to invite you to do the final prayer. Also, you're so inspired with these with Jesus tonight. So,
Well, yeah, I guess it's not me, it's the inspiration, as you said. Okay, let us take this moment and first of all raise our thoughts to our Creator, to our brother in spirit, brother, guide, and mother, Jesus Christ. Since we devote today talking about his life, his legacy, and ask that he and his team can protect us as we move to a new week, um, finalize one week, and as well finalize a year. And may we have strength to continue with our responsibility, our work, and face any adversity that has been present in our lives. May also this moment can be shared with those that are in the hospitals, that are sick, that is open to receive the blessings from your team. And thank you for this moment, this teaching that you have brought to us. And every year we have discussed, especially during this time of the holidays, reflect upon your teachings, and may this teaching bring happiness and understanding to our life. With the guidance, protection, permission, we close this moment of our activity, and so be it.
So be it.
Thank you, everyone. I hope we will have a good night, and please come back next Saturday for our next special talk. I think you're gonna talk, right, Kirsten, about what's the book?
Joanna D'Angelos' book, Times of Health and Conscientiousness.
Okay, so don't miss next
Don't
Saturday.
miss it.
Don't miss it at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, US. Thank you.